So we got a good question from Darryl, and this question's actually popped up a bunch recently, and it's something I personally dealt with a bunch as a white belt. And that is sort of claustrophobia, being like freaking out a little bit from being in tight positions. So Darryl said that he was having trouble when people get to like top position on them and they have all that heavy pressure on them. And he said that just when they're sitting there like this, it makes him feel claustrophobic. And of course he wants to tap, or he freaks out and doesn't do the right things that he's supposed to do. And I relate to this because, again, that's what I used to do as a white belt, especially in the beginning. I used to just wig out all over the place anyway. And then when someone would get me into, like, say, mount position, for instance, they'd be on top of mount, I would just push and shove and freak out, and then eventually I would be so exhausted from it, I would start hyperventilating because I felt like I couldn't breathe, and then I would just tap. And it wasn't made any easier by the fact that one of my main training partners at the time was my coach, who at times was like 230, 240, and sometimes he'd have a bit of a belly on him, and you're sitting there like this with this pressure in your face, and you're like, couldn't breathe, right? So for me, I got frustrated with myself because I was like, why am I tapping? Because I would look around the room and I would see, well, she's not tapping and he's not tapping, then why am I tapping? And I got frustrated with myself because, again, it's a mental thing, because it's not a submission, it's just uncomfortable. So what I did was I knew this, and so I remember distinctly the day that I did it, because I came into the gym and I was like, okay, my goal today, right? I would just have like this is the thing that I'm going to focus on today. I was like, I know that someone's going to mount me today because I suck. I'm not very good, and I get beat up all the time when I'm rolling. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to tap just from the pressure on the bottom of mount. That was my goal. So I remember, my coach at the time, who he was the one I rolled with, he passed my guard, got to mount. I started to freak out a little bit, and I started to feel that pressure on my chest, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. And then I remember looking over, and I remember seeing this person, right, one of the guys in the gym, he was in the same position that I was, right? He was in the bottom of the mount with a big dude on top of him, and he didn't tap, and he was still fighting. So I took a breath and kept fighting until my coach eventually armbarred me. And then I tapped. Now, the breath is pretty important. So a lot of times, if you're ever rolling and you get into these weird positions where you start to get really tense, or you start to freak out a little bit, or you start to get tunnel vision, take a breath. Take a big, deep breath in through the nose, in through the belly and up through the chest, and then let it out. Right? That was one of my big cues from my coach at the time. When I would compete, he would just scream, breathe, and I would breathe almost like that, like let it out, a very purposeful breath. I'm breathing with a very specific purpose. And then it was like, okay, relax, I'm good now, right? And I still just do this to this day. Anytime I secure a dominant position, or anytime someone secures a dominant position on me, I always start with a big deep breath. It helps me assess the situation, and then I go forward and make my move. So Darryl, that would be my advice to you, man. Again, know this claustrophobia thing, it's just a mental thing. You can conquer it. Realize that it's coming, right? Be ready for that sort of mental battle that you're going to have. When you start to get that feeling, you need to tell it to, basically, like I've said before in other videos, to shut the hell up, and you got to keep fighting. And then likewise, when you start to get that feeling where you start to freak out a little bit, and you probably start to hyperventilate like I did as well, take a big deep breath and breathe and relax, brother. And again, there's no reason to tap from discomfort. Unless you feel like something's popped, or maybe you're in an unsafe position, something like that, that's when you tap. But if you just feel like someone's heavy, that's not a time to tap. That's a time to figure out how to deal with it and to keep fighting. So Darryl, and anyone else having this trouble that I had personally as well, good luck to you. I hope this video helps you, and I'll talk to you guys next time.